Welcome to the Genius Alchemist podcast. I'm your host, Sarah McBride, and in today's conversation, I speak to Todd, who is an expert in remote viewing, astral projection, brainwave entrainment research. He's even one of the co-founders of the Pandora Star, which is a brain entrainment device, a light device. I actually own one myself, hence why I've asked him to come on. He's a master practitioner, an out-of-body explorer. He's got over 2 decades of experience, and from that he's been able to enter profound altered states of consciousness and facilitate access to hyperspace, the afterlife, and realms beyond. Now, as an international speaker, Todd guides thousands into profound states of consciousness, from deep meditation to lucid dreaming. He's a creator, he's a teacher of astral travel, and also the mind behind synchronicity walks, which is a unique experience which blends intuition, dice, and delightful surprises at every corner. Now, I know because I've actually engaged in these walks with him. So what we actually discussed today is reclaiming sovereignty. So using energy, using consciousness, but in a way where we reclaim our individual sovereignty and living life on our own terms, what that looks like. And Todd shares not only his experience, but his story as well, and how he's now living that life. So, let the magic begin. Hi Todd, it's amazing to have you on here today.
Hi, Sam. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. We've been trying to sync this up now for a couple of months, and the dates kind of haven't properly aligned, but I'm so excited we finally got here. And I want to start off by just saying how I know you. So pretty sure it was probably a social media connection many years ago, 8, 9, maybe even 10 years ago. And I purchased a Pandora Star from you for my healing centre at the time, which I can see one in the background right now. And then from that, I've become really fascinated with your work and all the different things that you cover at the topics. And I brought you to my centre at the time, and we did the synchronicity walk. We did a manifestation workshop and being truly aligned and taking your power back. And then we also did a workshop on, I think you brought your gongs, we were doing outer body experiences as well. So you cover a lot of stuff because you've been on the journey, I imagine, quite a while. I'd like, if you don't mind, to just share a little bit about your journey for the people that are listening.
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, I've been on the journey for a while. I'm 54 years old this year, and I would say my first experiences started very young, 4 or 5 years old. Had a near-death experience when I was 5 years old. Classic experience of, being in the light and having this sense of how am I gonna fit back in my body, and a lot of the classic things that when people have these experiences, not wanting to go back to the body, the beings that are there to meet us, saying things like it's not your time. So I had something that happened when I was 5, when I was drowning in a pond. And then after being revived, the weeks and months after that, I started having lucid dreams and out-of-body experiences. Of course, I had no idea about those labels when I was a child. This was back in the 1970s. So they weren't popular subjects. You couldn't go into libraries and find books readily available, mainstream books on the subjects. So I had to kind of navigate, that strangeness mostly on my own. Wow. And when you start having these experiences as a child, and again, you don't have labels for it, you don't have the support, because even your parents mostly don't have a clue what's going on. A lot of times we hear parents say things like, it was just a dream, it was just a dream.
Yeah.
In reality, it could be so much more. And, I'm well aware of that now as a parent. I've got 4 children, another one on the way. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. So I realize how much power my words have. And if I treat my children's experiences like they're not real, and it doesn't mean I have to be delusional and not have any ability to debunk my own experiences, but making that our starting point that this stuff isn't real. I don't think that that's honoring the experience, and it's not scientific either. So, at that age, I had to develop my own vocabulary. So whenever I was, pretty sure that I was having what I would now label an out-of-body experience, that was called sleepy house. And whenever I was pretty certain I was in my body, I would call that wakey house. And there were times when I was really confused, but thankfully, as an adult, I can really put more perspective on what happened. But this is with hindsight. So these were my early years. In my teenage years, I started experiencing things like synchronicity. In my early 20s, I went hitchhiking, and synchronicity was a constant travel companion. I had experiences that clearly demonstrated to me where it removed all sense of doubt that I was being guided by an inner force, that there were unseen forces that were looking after me. And it was in my mid 30s when I started consciously having out of body journeys again as an adult. And this has now been a consistent theme for me for the past 18, 19 years.
Yeah.
To the point where I now teach this stuff. And as you pointed out with Pandora's Star in the background there, I've been developing technologies for working in altered states of consciousness for over 20 years. So I used to work with binaural beats. I used to work with isochronic tones, but mostly Pandora's Star now. But all of these technologies are designed to synchronize the brain so we could experience hybrid states of consciousness. And Pandora, as an example, can run 4 frequencies simultaneously. And a lucid dream state has been mapped with EEG equipment. So we know that, there's theta involved, there's some beta waves, and then there's even gamma, high gamma waves. So it's interesting, to be able to explore, these various states of consciousness with different technologies. So this is pretty much me.
100%, yeah. And I've obviously used the Pandora Star because I've got one at home now because I closed my centre. I can vouch for that. The different states it puts you in, and a natural release of DMT rather than going hard and really fast with it and trying to have it yourself. But it's more a gentle but effective as well, to put you in states. And I used to have someone used to come to my centre just for that, because he said how that calming effect, as soon as you would go under it, just to shift in that state straight away. But that's an incredible story. I didn't know you had the near-death experience when you were 5. So thank you for sharing that. And it makes sense. It is the typical, isn't it, experience of someone that starts to explore, the invisible world and multidimensional. And that's who I've always associated you as being, multidimensional. And it doesn't matter what way you get there, whether it's, looking at the synchronicities and tracking the synchronicities, using the light device, the brain device, or whether it's the gongs and going out of body. And, I remember someone in your workshop saying they went out of body and they'd been plagued by demonic entities, is the way they described it, for a while. And when they were out of body during that workshop, they were able to battle with those entities, make peace, and then put it to bed. So, it's working and operating on all dimensions. And that's the reason I've always been drawn to your work as well. And, my last few podcasts have been covering a lot about empowerment and how we can take our power back and what that looks like. And, being careful not to disempower others as well, and being careful of who you work with. So, when you're choosing to work with someone. And it's interesting because another element to you, which I found mainly during lockdown, was the speaking out, the being empowered, how you were communicating with people. I remember there was an instance, I don't know if you remember this, and you posted about someone who was almost trying to disempower you over, they wanted you to step behind the line or do something, and they were like, I think you said they were harassing you in a store, and you had to really like take your power back from that situation and be like, that's it. And I remember you become really vocal about all of that at that time. So
I did indeed, because you speak of empowerment. Those years were so disempowering. People, it was like there was great spell casting taking place, negative spell casting, and people were falling completely unconscious. And what I couldn't quite understand was, you only had to look to the past to see that politicians and bureaucrats, they haven't got our best interests at heart. And if you want to outsource your protection and the protection and your well-being of your family to a government that should have no business making medical decisions, for me or my family, if you're going to outsource that responsibility, you're going to find yourself, in a lot of pain and suffering. And in some cases, it can be deadly. So, yeah, absolutely, I was outspoken. I'm very happy for people to, whatever direction that feels right for them, but having that respect, that same respect for someone else. If you choose, to obey mandates that in most cases make absolutely no sense whatsoever. Like here in the UK, if you can remember, we could go into a pub wearing a mask, and as soon as we sat down at a table, we could take the mask off. But if we got up to go to the bar or go to the toilets, we had to put the mask back on again. These kind of things, I think, were just designed to confuse people. It's that confusion, which is the same kind of, techniques that would be used in cults. And this is why a lot of people started using the terminology of the cult of COVID, because it just seemed like there was this dark psychology that was being used against the masses, and it created a lot of confusion, a lot of loneliness. And I'm aware, that a lot of these government think tanks are aware also of how dangerous and deadly loneliness is. And that's what was being created during those years. They wanted that confusion, and without voices, without people speaking up, then so many more people would have been lost to that darkness. So, for me, I didn't want to just virtue signal. I wanted people to see, through me doing. I went on the rallies, I went on the protests, and I know people say, protesting doesn't seem to make a difference, but it makes a difference to me as a man. I can't, with good conscience, do nothing. Even if it doesn't make much of a difference with regards to, government policy, I can't just sit back and do nothing. That's just not in my nature. It's my nature to look at the world with empowerment. And that means to look at it through the lens of love and not exclusively through the lens of fear. Yes, I will experience fearful moments, but I'm not going to stay in fear, because that's only going to take me so far. At some point, like they would say and suggest in the book, The Course in Miracles, miracles occur when we make that shift, that conscious shift from fear to love.
Yeah, 100%. And everything you've just said, I felt the same as well. And going to the protest made a difference in my life, because it was also, for me, an internal declaration of sovereignty. And as you say, there's a lot of dark magic. There's a lot of spell casting, which is going on, and trying to keep us disempowered, trying to keep us controlled. So because of that, it starts with yourself and the internal decisions and choices that you make. Even if people say, it's not making a difference, it does make a difference to you, because you're not buying into that. You're not listening. And then for me, when you do that, you're not vulnerable and susceptible to the other spells that they cast and the other dark arts that they use. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people out there that they knew something was wrong, but they don't know to the extent of what actually does go on. And they don't know to the extent of the darkness that the government can bring, because they're in that trap of being controlled, you know. And it's only when you have an experience, or you know, you really become attuned to your intuition, and you're connected to that intuition, which is the opposite of what you're saying about the loneliness. Then you feel disconnected. Only once you're in that state of connection do you know that actually all of this feels wrong. This is wrong, and what can I do about it? And you know, it's hard as well, because it's almost like we're in a trap of there's only so much we can do. And we talk about rebelling a lot and not following suit, which, you know, I know you and I did as far as COVID came, in terms of what we had to do. But I don't know if you noticed, there was some like real spiritual teachers that had been going a really long time that was like pushing, getting the COVID jab and things like that. And they were really, really pushing it onto people. So for me, I started questioning everything. Now, I knew I was not getting it and that was how it was, but I started questioning, in my reality, who can I trust and who can't I trust? So these figures as well are in the public eye, and, you know, people whose work that I'd studied, and they were literally gaslighting people. It became really confusing. I was thinking, are they under control, or are they actually aware of what's going on and they're part of that agenda? And it all become really confusing.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that too. And, you know, even within our friendship and family circles, you know, people's weak hearts and minds started to become very apparent. And this is what we're dealing with. You know, and this is one of the reasons why I think having a spiritual dimension to our lives is so incredibly important, especially in such times where, you know, tyranny needs to be put back in the ground. So, you know, what, like our grandfathers put back in the ground during the 1930s and 40s. You know, it started to rear its head in a big way. And, you know, and like you said, this stuff can be hard, but we also need to be reminded that we can do hard things. You know, our lives have become so domesticated. You know, we're in comfort zones. And, you know, this is one of the reasons why I push myself on a regular basis. Like, I'll go on hitchhiking journeys where I have no destination in mind, because it's about the growth that I experience along the way. It's why, you know, I would sometimes go wild camping in the middle of a harsh winter in Scotland, because I'm using the cold to wake me back up again. You know, where a lot of people have, you know, that inner sense of hibernation. I want to bring myself back to life. I want to use the energies of the seasons, you know, in appropriate ways. But at the same time, you know, winter does not mean that, you know, it does not mean hibernation for everyone. You look at one of the reasons I love pine trees. The spiritual meaning of pine is life over darkness, because it remains green throughout the winter months. You know, all year round, it remains green. So, you know, that's one of my favorite trees, one of my favorite essential oils, you know, that I'll use for energy work within my own home, because it reminds me of life over darkness, you know, this idea.
That's synchronicity. Just before you go on, that's synchronicity, because I live next door to nature reserve, and it was flooded 2 weeks ago. So I walked across a different way and found big, huge pine trees, this opening. And I've been going there daily to these pine trees, and the smell, and I didn't know the spiritual meaning. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spiritual meaning. But yeah, I completely agree. And I think this is why having a spiritual dimension to your life is important in these times, you know, because, and therefore spiritual practices. And I think this is why a lot of spiritual leaders that we saw promoting fear, you know, over our rights, you know, and because of the weak minds and hearts, because it made it very apparent these people were not practicing what they were preaching.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was really important for me, again, because like I said, I have 4 children and 1 on the way. I want to demonstrate to my children through doing, and I want them to see that I walk my talk, and my values, my morals, my virtues, that I'm strengthening my virtues. And I want them to see the kind of man that I am, on stage and backstage, being, hopefully in most cases they see the same man.
Yeah.
I know we all wear masks here and there. Maybe there are some areas where we don't have enough vulnerability, or where maybe some things should rightly be kept private. That doesn't mean that we're being secretive. It just means that we're cultivating something within ourselves that at that time does not need to be broadcast in a world where with social media, it's like we're encouraged to broadcast everything about ourselves.
Yeah.
This is actually a dangerous practice. Some things need to be cultivated quietly, especially these character flaws, these aspects of us that are virtues that are not quite in alignment just yet. So, yes, during that time period, I felt, the part of me that did need to broadcast was that part that needed to show leadership, that needed to show, that I wasn't just virtue signaling, that I was out there, in the trenches and showing through doing. It was important because so many people were falling unconscious. So many people were willing to, to not even think with any depth. And, it therefore got a lot of people in a lot of trouble. But yeah, we need our spiritual leaders in such times.
100%. And also what you were just saying, it made me think about something as well, that there's a lot of spiritual leaders who are more, they're less embodied in what they teach. And that was evident throughout those times. But something that I personally found about those spiritual leaders was they're too busy doing the multi-dimensional work, that they're not being grounded in this 3D reality. They haven't even integrated the trauma. And it was evident when we were going through what we were going through. It was like their shadows were playing out, and what they were, the way they were speaking to people, and you get this and you do that, and projecting onto people. But, they can go and talk with the angels, or, they can go and I'm having out-of-body experiences, and I'm a starseed and I'm this and I'm that. But actually, as a human, I'm not very well at being a human. I don't work very well. I've not integrated my trauma. I don't know how to interact with people. My communication's terrible. And soon as a real life event hits, the resilience shows, or lack thereof, and all of those different things. And that to me as well really showed me that even my work flipped a little bit of, you can't go into past life before you've dealt with this life, or you can't do this until you've done that. You've got to look at who you are now and be more grounded into that. And I think that's what you're modeling as well, with your virtues and your values and what you're following and your day-to-day practices. That has to come first and foremost, beyond the going out of body and, multi-dimensionally and going into different timelines. So I think that is part of being in our power as well.
Yeah, I think, self-empowerment is realizing that, part of it is realizing this holistic nature of reality. And if, we don't practice balance, and this would have been me at one time with astral projection. It was my life. I literally ate, drank, slept, astral projection. And it showed there were other areas of my life where I was very unconscious. And I then soon realized that I needed balance. It's one thing to understand our multidimensional heritage, but it's another thing to realize that we're here for a reason. And, the spiritual world will always be there. But this world, this is temporary in the grand scheme of eternity. This world is temporary. So for me, this is a real educational environment, a true spiritual, school for the soul. And so I want to make sure that I realize that, what I do here has an impact there. What I do there while I'm out of body has an impact here. So I want to live my life in the most holistic way. This is what, helps me feel truly empowerment, where if I'm feeling a little bit down, fine, I can go to my spiritual practices. I can go into meditation. I can go deep into spiritual reality through meditation, through astral projection. I can take some time there, maybe a half an hour during an out of body experience while the world is sleeping anyway. So while my region here in Scotland, the UK, Europe, while we're all sleeping, I can maybe briefly be consciously out of body for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And of course, the time there is very different than it is here. The Australian Aborigines talk about their dream time and how time is more circular. In these other dimensions, yes, it operates completely differently. So I can get a really long recharge while out of body, to where when I come back into my body and I wake up for the new day, I'm going to have a better relationship with physical reality and my friends, my family, because I'm treating these tools just as that, as tools. They're not, the means to the end. They're tools that I use along the way. And same as within my body, I can practice mindfulness within my body. I love doing energy work. I love being very aware of energies in the vein of something like the ancient Chinese practice of Feng Shui as an example. Learning how to harmonize with the natural forces of the world, and how qi, has a profound impact on the spaces, that we live in. And so, this is something that I discovered in the last few years, in particular too, in a bigger way, because when COVID kicked off, we decided we were living in London, and we decided, what, we wanted to move away from the madness to a degree, because my wife was pregnant at the time. I also wanted to raise our child outside of that cacophony of electromagnetic smog in a big city like London. I didn't want them, their first few years, their months and years, to be bombarded with man-made radiation, which is no good for us. So we moved to Norfolk, and we lived on a farm which was out in the middle of nowhere. We could barely get 4G. There was no 5G in the area. 3G was the strongest. And, during those years, that farmhouse was like a Feng Shui paradise. There was really not much that needed to be done. All the rooms were appointed, so you could easily have a commanding position from with any point, from the correct points in the room. The energy just flowed so brilliantly from the land through the house, back out into the land again. And then when we made the move last year from Northern England to Scotland, to the house that we're in right now, this house was the exact opposite of Feng Shui paradise. It's as if this house went against all the good principles of Feng Shui, of energy work. It's almost as if whoever built this house was angry and resentful as they were building the house.
Wow.
I kid you not, there are some light switches that are so unintuitively placed. Like there's one at the where it should be the entrance of a bedroom, right next to the door frame, is 2 meters away on the wall. And it couldn't get more, disharmonious, just entering that bedroom. And the staircase is in the center of the house, which, is not good for the good flow of energies around a house. So I had to really work hard. I had to remain conscious. And I had to be able to draw upon the physical and the non-physical, domains and allies from both of these worlds. And I think this is where true empowerment comes from, realizing that we have allies all around us all the time. But it's just being mindful of that, and realizing that for me, physically, the trees, there's a cherry blossom tree that's right next to the house. And, this has become one of my allies on the land for this new house. We moved here, and one of the things I noticed straight away, there is an overpass right behind the house. It's been pedestrianized, so there's no car traffic that goes over it anymore. But nonetheless, in Chinese philosophy, what would flow down from there or underneath there would be what they call bad water, which is bad qi. And so I went through all of the best Chinese ideas on this, with even things like a Bagua mirror, which I haven't employed. You can either have one of these concave or convex mirrors to either pull energy in or deflect energy away. Thankfully, I went other routes because I didn't want to deflect the energy from me and kind of focus it towards a neighbor as an example. That itself is going to cause me bad qi. So this household has really forced me to go deep within myself to really better understand my own shadow, because yes, the house when we moved in was neglected. It hadn't had any occupants for a few years, bar one man who lived here with 18 snakes, and he pretty much kept to like 2 rooms downstairs.
Wow.
The rest of the house was pretty much neglected. So if you can imagine what that would do to the energetics of a space. So, all of this empowerment for me starts at home, literally at home. And this house has really forced me to go deeper than I did before, especially.
Sounds like it.
Oh, absolutely. And,
can I just ask why you moved to that house when you were in the perfect one with all the perfect chi in Norfolk? What then came over you where you wanted to move to this one?
One of the reasons, and one of the main reasons, was my wife Sky. Her mom and dad live locally, and this is actually one of their homes, and this is the home Sky grew up in. Her mom and dad live about an hour away in the Highlands, and this house was pretty much just sitting empty, like I said, bar that one occupant. And so, one, it's helping us in a world that's gone mad with hyperinflation as well. But equally, for the last few properties, I've really followed the intuition. So when they made this opportunity available to us, we didn't just jump at it. I wanted, again, maybe it's part of the Stoic philosophy where, I wanted to sit with it. I wanted to meditate with it. I wanted to be silent, go into silence and really understand and connect to this house and connect to this opportunity. What does it mean for my family? What does it mean for my business? Because I'm not just a spiritual man, I'm a businessman as well.
Yeah.
So what will it mean for my business? So I wanted to really contemplate all the angles. And it was only signals that suggested go for it that came back with each inquiry. So followed my heart. And then when I got here, I had to question that, like I said, because the house, the house was so sick, and my family got sick 3 or 4 times within the first 2 months alone, with fluvid, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so I had to really address this. And I thought to myself, was my intuition off before we moved here? I don't think it was. I think, I was just so incredibly comfortable at the farmhouse, and I was forgetting what, struggle was like for others. And I needed to be back in the land of the real once again.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And also from knowing you and your business in London, and you used to do all the gong bats. I don't know if you had a physical premises, did you as well? So all of that you used to do, to then go into this comfortable farm, to then moving here, it's kind of pulling you into actually you need to do and think again as well. And from that, is your work online now? Because I'm just thinking, how would you even work? Because I know this is something we haven't discussed. How would you even work if you're in the middle of nowhere? Do you do any face-to-face, or is everything online?
So thankfully with Pandora Star, we have a network of at least 3,500 light owners around the world. And I really do mean around the world. We have people who own the light in most countries, and they use the light in a lot of cases, as part of their business. So maybe a retreat center a float center, who might use the light as a pre-session to a float experience. When you had your center, you had a light there. You now use it, personally.
Well, I actually do private retreats. So I have some one-to-one clients who fly over, and it's always in that room for them to use before as well. So I do use it in that way as well.
So my role now, yes, when we were in London, we had a mind spa, and we had one corner of that space. We had 8 Pandora stars set up in beautifully reclined seating positions. We had the gong chamber. We had, virtual reality. We had so many things for people to explore. And when we made the move to Norfolk, yes, all of that changed, but COVID changed everything anyway with all the restrictions. So I thought, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to give to myself and my family over the next few years, because I did give so much to the community at that time. And now being here in Scotland, I feel like that much more out of the loop of the London loop. But now I'm in these ancient lands of Scotland, and Scotland has things to teach me, about, for example, the indigenous plants, the fauna in this region. In the West, we're so used to using maybe something like white sage to clear a space, but that's not indigenous to the United Kingdom, the British Isles. So, I've gone deeper into the history, the indigenous history of plants here in Scotland. And so pine needle smudging, or mugwort, drying out the mugwort when it's in season, and then smudging with mugwort and using those indigenous species. And I feel just to me, it makes so much more sense, because the DNA as such of the plant for sage is not on this land, where, the DNA for the plants that grow here, they're part of this ecosystem, and therefore it's known within, the greater landscape. And I find that for me personally, I connect to, the land, the house better when I'm using, the local plants. So it's stuff like this, which I've really appreciated learning since I've been here. Equally, I used to really be into, my shiny rocks, crystals, especially beautifully polished crystals, high quality, A plus quality. But since being here, and I've gone for walks in the Highlands, and I find, crystals that maybe have basalt, which is volcanic rock. And then as they get eroded, you'll have quartz crystal that starts to grow in it, but not quartz crystal as people are used to when they go into a crystal shop. The crystal is usually very low quality visually, aesthetically, but the power that's in these stones, in these crystals, because of the volcanic nature of the part of Scotland that we're in, it's a real energy of chaos, that energy of the feminine. And so, my whole spiritual learning is taking on whole different dimensions now. So I'm really grateful that we've moved here, and that I now realize, after building this beautiful relationship with the house is no longer sick. The house has been energy worked every single day. There's not a day goes by where energy work is not done with the house, to the point where I can now feel the personality of the house, its consciousness. So for me, it has a personality, it has character. I've even given it a name. It has a Greenlandic language name, which just came to me during a very deep meditation where I was using hape, and it just feels right to be able to name the house and to allow its presence to work with me.
So everything you've just said, I agree with, and it's interesting, because I've been thinking about medicines of our land recently, and even working with the land. So what I was saying about hosting retreats here as well, the land is part of that. So, and I do think we are called definitely to different places, and whether that's for us to receive or for the land to receive from us. So it makes perfect sense. And it, again, synchronicity, because it's something I've been thinking about lately for myself. So it feels like you're doing work there for the lands as well, for a very specific reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, my energy work is definitely expanded, and I really feel the support from the land in a way that I started to feel when we were in Norfolk, because we were on 3 acres of land. It was, beautiful. We had ponds, we had some woodlands on the property. We were just a 5-minute drive from the sea. So we had all of that natural elements around us, which supported my energy work practices. And it was during that time where my practice started to become amplified beyond myself. I mean, I'd always practiced things like the Ho'oponopono as a force of love beyond myself. But when we moved to Norfolk and I had that much more space, that much more support from the elements, same as I do here, it was a natural progression to take my energy work practice into a much bigger space. So the world is, my energy work is now globally, where I'm working with the spiritual atmosphere. When we speak of the Schumann resonance as an example, to me, the Schumann resonance is, a personification of the spiritual atmosphere of what the ancients would have referred to and given, the sound of Om. To me, all of that is related. So, I'm constantly, when I'm meditating, I'm doing very powerful work to draw energy into this space to where it can be amplified. I've got pyramids set up within this property. I've got crystals and stones and minerals set up. I've got a lot of conscious creations here, where a lot of thought has gone into it for refining energy, harmonizing energy, amplifying the energy, and then sending that energy back out into the world. Because, from my out-of-body practice, and this is again why I really have to, for true empowerment, I have to see this in a holistic way. So when I've gone out of body, I know that there's always opportunities for me to learn. And I really want to be in that give and receive state of being. So I go out of body and I'm constantly being given. I'm being given knowledge. I'm being given experiences where I can grow. I can see the wisdom of other spiritual worlds. And on some of these spiritual worlds, I've been shown that they talk not just like us about Mother Earth and some of the traditions here where they talk about Father Sky. They know without any reservation that they have these different elemental forces and these different spiritual evolved beings as part of the planetary system itself. And so they would almost in a sense refer to it as a sky god. And the practice was that whenever you would meditate on one of those worlds, after you've built your energy through meditation, you would then give back. You would give a portion of that energy, back to the collective. And so this is where my practice has really evolved to now, where when I'm doing energy work, I'm very mindful of the needs of the collective. I'm almost like if we take this to a micro level, my space that I'm in right now, there's a bigger part of the space this way, which is my main part of my sacred working space. And everything has been designed, around this being the multidimensional center of my home. And it's almost like there's it's like an energetic spider web. And this is no matter, I'm up here, but at the same time, if there's a need in the household energetically, I can just feel the vibration through the web. And I will then maybe light some incense, or maybe I'll do the humming technique where I'm just humming like the pranayama, which is nicknamed the humming bee, and I'm feeling that energy within me but I can direct it anywhere within the household, because time and space are not the fundamental. Consciousness is the fundamental. So I can direct those energies anywhere. Or maybe I'm sensing the mood of the house as I've gone downstairs and I realize that there's some energy support needed emotionally. So maybe as I'm walking around the house, what am I leaving in my wake as I walk up and down the stairs, as I'm walking, up and down the hallway from room to room? Am I being conscious in that moment? Because if the web has alerted me to a need in the household, what am I now going to do? Am I going to switch? Am I going to go into a state of fear? Oh, wow, my wife is, experienced something here. She needs a bit of support. Am I going to switch into fear? Or am I going to become the mountain, the sacred masculine philosophy. I'm the mountain. If my wife needs to blow off some steam, let her blow off some steam. I can be very conscious. I don't have to fall unconscious. I don't have to feel like it's an attack. I don't have to feel like I'm not a strong enough man to handle my wife being emotional in that moment. I don't need to intellectualize her feelings. It's not what she needs in that moment. But this is a matter of staying conscious. So as I'm walking around the house, I do my absolute best to be conscious, because as I'm walking around, I'm creating this wake behind me. And what is being left in my wake? Is it fear or is it love? And it's exactly the same for the world. So, for me, my empowerment, my gift of empowerment to the world, again, I'm just taking that spider web and I'm just visualizing it in a much bigger way. So if there's a need, for example, all the fear surrounding the Middle East is at the moment, the Middle East will do.
That was going to be one of my next questions. Sorry.
It is.
So interesting.
The Middle East will not benefit from me and my fear. And I know a lot of people say, we shouldn't focus on this kind of stuff because we'll make it bigger. That's not the spiritual teaching. The spiritual teaching is when we focus on things, we don't project our fears on that situation.
Yeah.
We move into a space of love, and within that place, we're able to give, awareness. We're able to give understanding. We're able to give mercy. We're able to give forgiveness. This state of unconditional love does not make us a doormat, like maybe a lot of people would assume. Oh, if I'm unconditional loving with somebody, they're just going to walk all over me. No, that's not self-love. That's self-hate. When we allow others to walk over us and to walk all over us, that's self-hate. So my gift of, this self-empowerment, I've filled my cup. I'm strong enough now to then give. And, going back to close off that loop from earlier, give to receive, I'm well aware of this great spiritual paradox. And I know that when I've received, it's always a time to give. It's never a time to wait. It's always a time to give. So I'm constantly in that flow. And so if, with the world, if there's a situation like that, I might momentarily, because I am human, I might momentarily be spun into fear, but I will not stay there as long as I would have done when I was much younger. My spiritual practices have made me a stronger man.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And just where you were going then with the synchronicity again, because it was in my awareness about, what can we do from your perspective? I know I have my own energy practices and the things that I do, but have you got any kind of, advice for people listening? Because I'm the same as you. I disagree about, well, you don't focus on it, because there needs to also be awareness of what's happening. And, there needs to be awareness of these things. And I remember years ago, there was some guy and all his focus was about, and his teachings were about, was focusing on the positive and only letting that flourish. And we can't focus on anything going on. And I shared something about, like, I don't know, a bushfire in Australia, and they were trying to raise money for some, koala bears or something like that. So he deleted me, and then sent me this message about, how I'm spreading this negativity, and by sharing that, it's not going to do anything. And I was like, well, it was, because I was trying to raise some money for these, injured koalas. But anyway, that is the thing that I disagree with most, when people say, do not focus on that thing. To me, it's cognitive dissonance, it's avoidance. And, I do like to, okay, what can I do? Is it, whether it's prayers, whether it's, meditation, whether it's acknowledgement, whatever it is, I like to be in that. But do you have any kinds of specific advice? Because this seems to be more of your arena now, and you're focusing more and more on it energetically, for people out there, and what they should do or can do, not should do, if there's anything available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree. And I think one of the simplest ways to put this, with regards to what a lot of people would call the love and light brigade, where everything's good. Oh, it's all good. This is sign of serious spiritual bypassing, and also a lack of real vulnerability. So, the pushback you were getting was, a sign of their own inner struggle in itself, and their lack of their lack of being able to be vulnerable with you in that moment. Because for a lot of us, men in particular, and I know this is everybody, but I find, because I'm a man, I need to speak from the heart of a man, from the mind of a man, for other men in particular, and for young men in particular. So, my struggles, like I said, there are some things based on my Stoic, teachings. I don't teach Stoic philosophy, but things that I've learned. There are some things that I keep to myself, because these are things that maybe I'm weak on, and I need the time and I need the space to cultivate this within myself. And then there's things that the world needs to see. My sons need to see. My daughters need to see. They need to see my vulnerability. They need to see my strength in certain areas. But at the same time, there are certain people who have earned that right. And there are a lot of cases where there are people that have not earned that right to see me, and all of my vulnerabilities, my weaknesses, because sometimes people will use that stuff against you, So, when we look at things like, the idea of not focusing on something because it will make it bigger. What happens when we ignore our personal debt, like our bills? Do they get better because we ignore them? No, exactly. They get worse. And the same thing applies in the world. And like I said, the difference is this. If you're projecting fear onto a situation, yes, energetically, you are making it worse. And this is why, spiritual awareness is so important. Self-awareness is so important. So me being aware of what am I doing right now? Am I projecting fear, or am I giving my awareness to this situation and allowing unconditional love and beings who are far more attuned to and practiced with, and in some cases, masters of unconditional love. Again, I surround myself knowingly with allies from this world and all the worlds. So, if I've not mastered unconditional love, which I have not, okay, I have not. I've probably mastered tough love really well, but unconditional love, messy love, yes, unconditional love, I'm still getting there. So I surround myself with the teachings of those who have mastered it. I surround myself when I go out of body. I seek out beings from other worlds who have mastered it, and I ask for their assistance here in the body. So one of the ways that I do this, I use the Ho'oponopono practice, which we've spoken about before. It's a practice which I feel, because it's been simplified for modern times, anybody can do it. And the beautiful thing about the Ho'oponopono, whereas in the past, even up to the 20th century, into the second half of the 20th century, this powerful Hawaiian spiritual practice, which is all about forgiveness and reconciliation, was more of a family community practice. But if you can imagine, in those days, bringing the clan together to air our grievances, to forgive and be forgiven, that is no easy task for anybody involved. We could be talking about small misdemeanors as well as major crimes committed against the community. These things are not going to be easy. And this is one of the reasons I like the idea that, comfort should never be at the center, of these kind of conversations. This is entitlement to a large degree. So, the spiritual leaders that were at the center of these practices, when they were bringing the families, the communities together, they would give people would have they would have preparations to make before the family or the community came together, because this stuff was going to be difficult. Can you imagine facing your accuser or facing your abuser in these gatherings? That's challenging. So it got to a point where I think it was the 1980s, where one of the last great spiritual kahunas, spiritual leaders of the Hawaiian spiritual practice of Ho'oponopono, she decided to update the practice to make it very personal. So she made the practice one that was solely between you and the divine. And this is how it's now been updated. So your personal forgiveness work practice is between you and the divine only now, with the modernization of the Ho'oponopono. So you can now do forgiveness work in the privacy of your own spirit. And even if that involves getting closure with other people, your spiritual work, your forgiveness work does not depend on the actions of any other human being. If they're not showing remorse, like if they've done you wrong, if they're not showing remorse, that no longer matters. This is, again, between you and the divine. And the more that you go into healing what is within you, you start to create this space of love around you where others can naturally start to heal too. So the modern practice of the Ho'oponopono is the healing is for you first and foremost, and secondary for others. And so this is an excellent practice for people who want to start to make a difference in the world, because as you start to heal those and situations around you, because you're able to start to extend love. And the whole point of forgiveness work is to be able to experience, to reveal the love that is already there. That is the whole purpose of forgiveness work, is to reveal the love that is always present. Yeah. And that is why practices like the Ho'oponopono are so very special, in my own heart, in my practice. So it's a simple prayer, but it's far more dynamic beyond, the surface, beyond the veil. It's the same with anything, like with manifestation. 99% of all manifestation is taking place behind the scenes. When we look in the mirror, like if I look into the mirror, which is a metaphor for my life, for me as a man, if I look in the mirror, what is the reflection that I'm seeing? I'm seeing the reflection of yesterday's thinking, of yesterday's way of feeling, yesterday's behavior. So it's going to take time to see that reflection change. And when I look into the world, I'm always seeing a reflection of myself. Am I looking to this region within the Middle East with love? Am I seeing the love reflected back to me, or am I only seeing fear? Am I only letting the fear be amplified by the mainstream media, by everyone else who is not centered within themselves? So what I would do is I would sit down. You can do the Ho'oponopono on the fly, if you desire, you can do it, make it a very simple practice. For me, I make it very ceremonial. I'll put some incense on. I'll wait till I have some time to where I have the space to maybe have a half an hour, whatever I feel I can dedicate, to this practice. I'll then get into a really powerful state like samadhi, like they speak about in Eastern traditions, samadhi, which is this intense concentration within meditation. And so I'm intensely concentrating on building energy. And this is the first thing that I do, because again, it's about filling my cup first so that my cup can overflow to others. So first thing I'm doing is building my energy. So I'm raising my internal vibrational energy. I'm doing this through affirmations. I'm doing this with my intention. All healing journeys start with a strong intention. So before I even start, what's my intention for this ceremonial ritual? For me, in this moment, it's forgiveness work for, let's say, again, that region. Okay, so classically with the Ho'oponopono, we have Dr. Hugh Lin, when he was working for the Hawaiian State Hospital for the Mentally Insane. One of his practices, one of his mantras, when he would pick up a file of a patient, he would never see the patients in person.
Yeah.
His agreement with the hospital was that I will only you will give me the folders. I will not work on the ward, and I will be left to do this work on my own. So this is what I do. So basically, he would pick up a folder. He would maybe look at the photograph of this patient, and he would say to himself, what is within me that has caused this issue within my brother, within my sister? So it's almost as if I'm picking up this energetic file for the craziness that's happening in the Middle East. I'm picking up this file and I'm saying to the Ho'oponopono ancestors, I'm saying, what is within me that is causing this situation? And as I am willing to look within myself, what is within me? What darkness is within me? Because all minds are joined on a deeper level of being. We are all part of the collective. So what is within that region is within me. Whatever fear is within the collective is within me. So if I deal with the fear within me, I start to deal with the fear within the collective. I'm not adding to the problem. I'm literally giving love. I'm creating a space of love, as a force beyond myself. And so this is how I practice. I would sit there with my energetic folder for this problem, for this situation. What is within me that is causing this problem? I then allow the inner dialogue, the inner voice of my subpersonalities, these parts of me that are not feeling connected, these parts of me that are feeling like they've been sheared off. And it's my role to start to bring this energy back together. It's my role to do the soul retrieval for myself so that I can start to operate as a whole individual, which makes me far more effective for my world. So my practice is simply this. I look within myself, what is within me that is causing this? And then I start to do the healing work, the prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Anybody who's gone deep into the Ho'oponopono practice knows we're not just reciting a prayer. Each one of those phrases is rooted deeply into other realities, and they have real meaning attached to them. Maybe, for example, I'm sorry. I'm saying sorry for my beliefs, my fearful beliefs, my negative thoughts. Forgive me for the reality that they have created, the reality that my negative energy, my negative thinking has created. Thank you for all the support from the universe. Thank you for all the support from the Ho'oponopono ancestors. Thank you, to myself for having the awareness to step into my power instead of looking at this situation with fear. Thank you to, all the ancestors. Thank you to the Ho'oponopono ancestors. Thank you to my support system, my inner support system, my outer support system, the tree, the tree beings that are just next to me in the woodland. And as I'm doing this work, I'm probably connected up in a lot of cases with an earthing wire that goes out this window. You have to see there's a wire just back here that goes out the window and is then pegged into the earth with a copper pole. So I'm grounded to the earth. I'm not taking on this energy of the Middle East on my own. I'm really sorry, but it's not me and you against the world. It's all these allies like Mother Earth. So as I'm moving energy, that energy is being moved through me and away from me into the earth, because Mother Earth is a highly evolved spiritual being who can handle all of that and more.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's powerful, and it's something, Ho'oponopono is something I practice as well. And it is powerful when done in the right way, what you're saying. And it's about us, isn't it, becoming a conduit. So every form of energy gets filtered through our own programs, our own shadows, our own wounds, trauma. So when we take charge of that and be empowered from that space, then we become a clearer conduit and can assist in that way. So I love that. Well, thank you. It's been amazing for you to share everything that you have today. Thank you for coming on and just giving so much of your knowledge and wisdom. If people want to contact you, I will put it in the show notes, but what's the easiest way for them to reach out?
I would say one of the best ways to reach out is actually through my YouTube channel, because there, as you're probably aware, communities are built in the comment sections of videos.
Yeah.
And people can see that they're not alone by being able to, so therefore my YouTube channel is the best place. They can go and watch, videos which are based on my experiences. They can comment, and they can then take part, and they can be interactive by taking part, by making comments, and that's the best place.
What's your YouTube channel called?
It's just my name, Todd Alchemist. So if they type in Todd Alchemist on YouTube, they'll find me.
I'll put your YouTube link in the show notes. But
Very
thank you,
much
Todd.
so.
And I just want to honour and acknowledge all the work that are doing for the collective. So thank you for that, as well as joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir, for the invite.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Genius Alchemist podcast. If this episode has ignited your curiosity or inspired you in some way, then I encourage you to subscribe and share with friends. For those that want to stay in the loop and be the first to know about future episodes, special offers and free resources, make sure to check out the link in the show notes. By joining my mailing list or reaching out through that link, you'll have exclusive access to all the latest updates and ways that you can connect with me. I look forward to sharing more inspiring stories with you all in future episodes.